What I found memorable about this play was how it was touching back on the old-fashioned part of life, meaning they talked about dating in a situation where you would make a phone call to someone, you take them out to movies, you'd hold their hand, maybe kiss them, compared to the hookup culture that's present today. And another thing that I thought was pretty memorable was about how the whole cast would describe the scene of a party and they would all describe certain words as a collective, and I thought that was pretty memorable. And also, the whole rape culture theme of it almost makes the entire play memorable because you see it present in everyday college, and it's really disturbing. The first theme that I want to talk about is bias and profiling, because just because the way Chloe was dressed, she was being judged by others. She was being called a slut, a bitch, very easy, and almost she had it coming for her, which is a terrible phrase that's very commonly used today. The second theme, which is actually the biggest theme of the play, is sexual assault, and it covers all bearings because they talk about the culture of it and how a lot of times when people are sexual assaulting people, they don't know that they are, and in this specific play, it's very clear that they are and they know that they are. But in other times, it's not as well known. And they also talk about like all the phrases that are connotated to the victim of sexual assault, meaning she had it coming from, like I said earlier, look at the way she's dressed, she's asking for it, and stuff like that's just not okay. And then they also portray the victim afraid to come out and speak on what has happened, and that's always very common in the sexual assault and like the rape culture because a lot of times the victims feel victimized and judged, and as they should be because people are always looking at them in a negative light, and they are the true victims, but a lot of times there's a little bit of blame put towards them, which is what makes them afraid. A third theme of this is social media and how it's not really a joke and how everything you put on should be monitored. I mean, the video and the pictures and the live tweets that the football players were putting up was clear that they were trying to be funny and didn't they were being malicious about it. And the hashtags and everything that's on there is seen by the public eye. And before, like not before long, it was viral. It was on all these news outlets, and they tried to delete it, and they thought that would just make things vanish, but that's not the case because the internet is very dangerous. Once something's on the internet, it's never gone. And I think they make sure to make that known and be aware of like what you're posting on social media, which is very prevalent today. Three examples of the plot that set this different than Intimate Apparel is one, the flashbacks. They constantly flash back and replay the same scene over again and act it out as if there's always two sides of a story, and the alcohol impairedness judges you don't know which one's the truth, so they play both sides of the story to see how it could have played out in either situation, and you don't really know which one's the truth, even though you can infer it. It's not directly told. Second part that I would like to discuss that differs this Good Kids from Intimate Apparel is breaking the fourth wall. The characters reach out to the audience, and as a whole, they have all these like monologues about what's going on in the play and the major themes of the play, meaning sexual assault, social media, gender roles, bias and profiling. They cover all of these within the play, and they cut away from the play almost and discuss these or these themes in a little bit more depth. A third way that this is different than Intimate Apparel is that they flash back to certain scenes that are very relevant, meaning they play through the play or the part where Chloe is at the party and she's talking to Connor, and then they'll continue the story how it goes, and then later in the story they flash back to that moment just describe and go in more depth what actually happened at that party, because they show the broad sense of her going to Connor and her leaving the party, but then they don't go into more context about how drunk she was, how she was very vulnerable, how she could barely walk, and these things made things more clear and actually showed like the sexual assault side of what actually happened. Gender and sexuality are addressed pretty straightforward, meaning the males are the jocks, they're the aggressors, and the women are more passive towards the men, but towards each other they're very aggressive and catty almost. They just treat each other in a bad manner, and you see that very often in life, and especially in the college and party culture. And the questions that this raises is like, what can we do to prevent the rape culture that surrounds us in party and college? how can we inform those that are involved about consent and about like sexual assault and the realities of it, because a lot of people who, like I said, don't know that they're sexual assaulting someone, they actually are, and all like the things they talk about, consent, meaning she didn't say no, like stuff like that. It needs to be like known that that's actually sexual assault. One last question that this play raises, and I want to go in more depth about it, is how do we remove the negative stigma that's brought upon victims of sexual assault? Because, like the girls were saying in the play, and like reality actually shows, girls will say, oh, like she's dressing like that, she wants that, and that's not necessarily what they're going for. Girls are allowed to dress how they feel and express themselves in a certain way, and they shouldn't be harassed about this. It shouldn't say that they're trying to get raped, and people portray the victims as if they should be at blame, and that's what makes them afraid to come out and tell the police or report their incidents, and it sticks with them their whole life. And I think that this question is like a really big question and really relevant today.